Thank you. We have received some word from the translators. Is anyone listening to this in translation? Would someone please, is this okay, the sound? Ask somebody, they're raising their hand. Okay, good. Thank you. I serve as a social business evangelist for IBM. And as such, I speak to business leaders and line of business people. And I'm really excited about this. And then I come here and they say, you hold this in this hand, you hold this in this hand, and you have to stay right here. It's like I'm very limited right now. I feel like I'm in a box that I can't move. So, and the translator said, you must speak slowly. So as a result, this is going to be interesting for me, okay? Because my best times come when I'm on an airplane, like I was yesterday flying from the States, sitting next to this gentleman, and he asked me, he said, so what do you do? And I said, we have 6 hours, let me tell you. So you don't want to sit next to me on a plane. So I appreciate very much the opportunity to be here. It's quite a privilege. And in my role as a social business evangelist, one of the things that we speak most about is this idea of what is it we're going to do with social business and why do we want to use it inside of our businesses. We did a study. In fact, our 2012 CEO study was just released last week, but prior to that, it was a 2010 study. And we asked chief executive officers, what is it that you want most in your leadership? What are you looking for in your leadership? Does anyone have any idea what that might have been? The most important quality that they want in their leaders. Anyone? Okay, I'll go ahead and give you the cue. It's creativity. I was surprised when I saw this. In fact, when I speak to companies and I tell them, your leaders want you to be creative, most people start to look around and go, I'm not sure what they mean by that. And I'm not sure that our leaders are very creative, right? So when you think of creativity, if you'd help me, and it would be helpful if it was in English when you respond, what words come to mind when you think about creativity? Imagination, that's good. Others? Open-minded, excellent. I was with an audience like this, and I asked the question, and a gentleman raised his hand. He said, I think of the word messy. Messy. And I said, that's great. I love that. So, by the way, what do you do? And he said, I'm a compliance officer at a bank. Okay? So I understand messy. If we look in the thesaurus and we say we want to go make our company creative, what does that mean? Well, these are the words, right? If you want to make your company creative, here's the words. Now, I would ask those of you who are in a company today that you maybe have a website or a corporate brochure or annual report. When I speak with companies, I love to sit down in their lobbies when I'm waiting to talk to their board of directors, pull out their annual report. It doesn't take me but a couple of pages, and I'll find words like this. We're innovative. We think our people are extremely important to us. Our people are creative assets. And I love to take that report with me into the boardroom and drop it in front of the president and say, I'm so glad to be here because you believe exactly what we believe. Now, can you tell me how are you doing this? And then I pause, and then I add, and we can help you do that. Because most executives aren't really sure, how do I do this? How do I actually bring this into my organization? If they think it's important, why is it so important? It's become a competitive edge. In your own businesses, think about how you are trying to get into new markets. Some of the video that we saw here earlier talked about how people are just moving towards social media to reach new markets, to reach new people that we've never reached before. I was with a company just a few weeks ago. Their original use case, this was over 100 years ago in the United Kingdom, they made buggy whips to whip horses. And now they're making polymers for use in space stations. All right, their business has changed over the course of 100 years. Your business is changing almost every year, things change. If creativity is important, why is it hard to find? I'm looking around the audience. This is one audience I'm looking at, and I hate to do this because sometimes when I do this, when I speak of ages, I get caught looking at people, and then they look at me and they say, you think I'm old? What, right? But looking at this audience, I'm very pleased to see the age group here, okay? Quite a few young people as well as more mature workers, okay? And I stand on the mature side. Why is it so hard to find? It's because businesses, we stifle it, okay? We often in our businesses, we tell people, we do things that are counter to being creative. Picasso said, we're all born artists. The challenge is to remain an artist as we grow up, all right? All of us are artists. When I talk about people being creative in your organization, often your mind will go, well, who are the creative people? And you begin thinking about, oh, my people in marketing or my people over in corporate communications. Those are the creative people. No, you're the creative person. Right? They happen to have a creative job, but you are a creative person. We all are creative. You don't have to ask a kid to be creative. Okay? I have a 2-year-old grandson. I don't have to ask him to take a risk, to do something dangerous. He'll do that. Okay? There's a story of a little girl. She's in a class and she's drawing. And she's busily just sketching away, and the teacher walks up to her and says, "Tell me, dear, what are you drawing?" And she said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher, like most of us, goes, "Well, that's nice, dear, but no one knows what God looks like." And the little girl, without looking up, goes, "They will in a minute." Right? She wasn't bound by the fact that no one knows what God looks like. In her mind, she knew what it was. She knew the answer. She was willing to take the risk. Creative people are connected. They observe. They experiment. Someone said out of the box. There's risk-taking involved. How many times has your boss come to you and said, "I want you to go out and take risks. I want you to go out and try things even if you fail"? Often that's not the case in our businesses. Often we're risk-adverse. We try to keep from taking risks. We try to keep from failing. But creativity requires us to have this connected, to be experimental. So in our businesses, one of the things I get to do is speak a lot of times to university students. And I was recently speaking to a group of about 60 graduates of social media. And as I was talking to them, I said, I have nothing to tell you about how to be connected, how to communicate, how to find answers, how to find people who know something. I can't tell you any of that. But what I am about to tell you is what you're about to walk into. You're about to step into a business that's going to do things to you that's different than the way you currently communicate. Think about our businesses. How do we do this connective, listen, observe? What do we use? Email. Okay? What feeling do you get? What emotion comes up when I say the word email? Anyone? Pardon? Loss of time. Some people feel overburdened, depressed. How often do you look at your email box and say, "Gee, I've got so much stuff in here"? My boss calls it Tetris email. Have you played the game Tetris? Okay. He said the whole day he's just cleaning emails out, trying to keep them from filling up. Because when the box gets filled up, he gets punished, right? So often we look at email as a to-do list for us that other people own. They send us emails, and then we have to do these things. They send us emails, and we have to do these things. And we've become slaves to our email. It's not that email is bad, okay? Email is not bad in and of itself, but think about how effective is the communication that you have in email. How often could other things be used other than email? And we tell people, okay, so we're going to use email, that's the way we're going to communicate, or we're going to use meetings. Let's just all get together. Let's get together in a room. We'll do this once a week, once a month, and we'll do a status update. That's what we'll do. We'll get together. Think about, in fact, I'm looking around, I see some young faces. You know, before you got into business, how often did you and your coworkers or your people that you work with at college how often did y'all just meet together, get together in a room to say, we're going to meet here to do something? It's rare that we have these fixed meetings, or we have a conference call. And again, these things aren't bad. But how many times have you been on a conference call that's lasted 1 hour and you were there for 5 minutes of information? You sat through 55 minutes to try to find 5 minutes of information. And when I speak to companies about the abuse of conference calls like this to do status updates, they'll say, well, it's just an hour meeting. There's 50 people on the phone, but it's just an hour. No, it's 50 hours that you're losing in your company. Again, not a bad technology, not bad to use, but do we abuse it? Is it really helping us be more creative? And then shared drives. Okay? One of the things I love to do when I walk to a company is I say, okay, I'm a new employee with your company, let's say, and I have an interesting idea, and I've developed it, and I've created a document, a white paper, something about this. Where do I put it? And normally I'll be told, well, that depends. In a shared drive somewhere, maybe on a folder, maybe in a site somewhere, okay? That's how we are trying to communicate. It's broken, folks. Okay? It's broken. And I say this from a bit of experience. I've been doing social for 4 or 5 years, but prior to this, I was doing content management and document management for 30 years. We've been trying to solve this problem of how do we share ideas, how do we share information. This content model is broken because if you think to yourself, I have an idea, I've put it into a document in some form I can now share. The mere fact that you say, I'm going to go put it in this folder or on this site, by doing that, you're already starting to describe how you expect people to find it. You as an author are saying, this is how people will find it. This is who should find it. I'm going to put it over in this area where certain people can get to it and other people can't. Or I'm going to put it in the area where I think people will look for it, when sometimes other people need to see this. Okay, the content model is broken. If we look at the way we buy books, how do you buy books now? You walk into a bookstore. I don't know if this works internationally or not, but in the U.S., when I was growing up, we did a thing called Dewey Decimal System. We're in a library, right? Okay, libraries had Dewey Decimal System. It was a numbering system of how books were stored on shelves. And you walked into a library, and there was one book, and it was on one shelf at a particular place, and it was categorized. We don't do that when we buy books now. We walk into a bookstore, we browse around. We may go over into one section and see, well, here's a book on how to help men cook. Okay, it's in the cooking section. But over here in self-help, there may also be the same book. It's applicable in multiple places. And so it's not about the storing of knowledge. It's not about where we store stuff. It's about how do we have knowledge accidents. Okay? There's a gentleman, Stephen Johnson, he wrote a book, Where Ideas Come From, which is part of the basis of this presentation. In it, he speaks of how things will happen inside of organizations where knowledge will be shared and people will have these, what we call aha moments. Think about good ideas that you have. Think about the fact that you see something and you observe it and you say, I think I can fix this problem, or this problem is bothering me. I need to fix this. How often do you automatically have an answer, or do you often wait and think about it? And it may go dormant. You may go to sleep. You may spend some time. And then later, you're having coffee, someone says something, it reminds you of it, a new idea comes to mind, and you have this brilliant moment, this moment of insight. We have to have that in our organizations. It's not a matter of having prescribed knowledge. It's a matter of having knowledge accidents. And I'll share with you some examples of that. When we take content and we put it away, it's not that content's not important. It's not that what we write and what we create is not important, but it's only one part. Think about the way we have and share knowledge. Part of it is content. Okay? So part of it is creating documents, putting documents away. As I was standing outside this morning, I was looking inside the library, looking at some of the books that are for sale, and Excel and Word, and all these books about creating documents. That's all good, but often we will have conversations. Think about your email, your chat. We know some Twitter handles over here. People have all kinds of conversations, and then we get together in groups, communities, teams, but it's all a matter of being people-centric. Okay, it's all about having people in the middle of this, because our view is that if you have content, you really want to find the person who created it. And once you find the person who created it, you might find more content, you might find a conversation. It's a people-centric view, is what we believe is the key to being a social business. It's about the creator, not about what they've created. It's not about the creation. So let's start with our people. So in a business, how do we actually focus on people? I'm going to show you some screenshots, and later you'll probably see some demonstrations. But here's a screenshot of what we use within IBM and also what our customers use. This is a profile page. This may look like a Facebook page. It may look like a lot of social pages. But what this allows me to do is to actually say, here's who I am. Okay. Here's my reporting structure. So here's the people I report to. So it'd be nice to know if I can't get in touch with Lewis, who's his boss. This is much more important. This is my network. These are the people that I work with, not who I report to, but who I work with, who I associate with. And often, the people that I work with aren't necessarily my reporting structure. Think about yourself. Who do you deal with on a daily basis? Is it your boss and your boss's boss? Or is it other people in other organizations? Is it partners? Is it other people? Is it your customers? This is my network. And then here I can also share things like my background. What have I done in the past? How many of you have been in your current job or in your current company for longer than 5 years, for more than 5 years? A few, okay? I would imagine that over that time, when you were first hired, you're not doing the same thing now that you were doing when you were hired. You've done other things over the course of 5 years. We move around a lot within companies. But yet, the knowledge that you gained, the things that you did, for instance, I mentioned earlier, I've been doing content management for 30 years. I am now in a position that I'm doing social business. But yet that 30 years of knowledge is still important. And so in my profile, I say things like, I used to deal with content management. Then people can find me. So your knowledge is important no matter where you are in the organization, and you can share that. Tags. Tags are another way to describe yourself. In fact, I'd love for you to sit here and think to yourself, how would you describe yourself in those little short words? What are your skills? Are you a communicator? Do you communicate? Do you know a programming language? Do you deal with a certain industry? These are all tags that we put in our profiles to allow people to find us. People will meet together in communities. This is another thing about people. They gather together to work together. This is a human resource community. And what this does is it allows new people in the company to come in and determine, how do I get my badge? How do I get my PC? They share ideas here. This is an example of a search. So inside of IBM, if I'm looking for someone, here I'm going to look for someone, I'm going to say social evangelist. And I'm actually searching the entire IBM social network. I'm not looking for a particular person. I'm not looking for a particular document. I'm just saying, go find me stuff about social evangelists. And the results come back with 1,600 results. Now within that, there are people, profiles, there's discussions that are going on, there's communities. But I'm looking for a particular person. But over here in my tag cloud, I see the tags that are associated with these documents or with these items. Ambassadors. That's a key that somebody's used a lot. An ambassador within IBM is someone who's passionate about what they do. We have people who are called ambassadors. Their day job is that they are an accountant, or they're a programmer, or they're a bookkeeper. But their passion is around, say, being a social ambassador, or being an ambassador for development tools. So these ambassadors are passionate people. So I actually want to look for an ambassador, and so I click on the tag ambassador, and what I get is this list now, 280, but the top list is a guy named Luis Suarez. I click on that, and it takes me to Luis's profile. I have found the person I'm looking for. Now let me introduce you to Luis Suarez. Luis has been at IBM probably for 10 or 12 years. 4 years ago, he said, email is madness. I'm spending too much time in email. I'm quitting. I'm just not going to use email anymore. It's over. Done. Email's off. Can you imagine doing that today? Just saying, I'm done. No more email. He made that statement. He said, I'm just not doing it. Now, I would have thought, like you may think, he went over in the corner and died, right? Because nobody can talk to him. He's out of touch. It's not reality. You can't do that. Yet Luis, over the course of 4 years, has become an avid spokesperson. He's a speaker. People call on him to come to conferences and speak. He talks all about how you live outside your inbox. He's very influential within IBM. When he says things on his profile page, or he says things through Twitter, or through some of our company's social networks, and a lot of people listen. More people listen than if they send him an email. Luis is an example. I, for instance, have followed his example. I don't live entirely without email, but every day my inbox is empty. Okay, because we just don't carry on conversations like we used to inside of email. We carry them on in a social network, and I'll share with you a little more how we do that. It's about having these open conversations. Think to yourself about a problem that you had maybe this past week. Okay, you had a question, and you knew someone who had the answer, or you thought someone had an answer. Okay? So let's say I have a particular question, it's a technical question, and I know that one of my friends, let's say Luis Suarez, let's say I know that he knows the answer. If I were to call Luis and ask him the question, the two of us benefit. I've learned something and he's learned something. He's learned that I don't know much, and I've learned the answer to my question. Or we can do that in email. But how often are those questions things that actually could be opened up? Imagine if you asked that question in the open and other people benefited from it. How many times do you get emails that you get an email and then you send it off to someone else to be answered, or you add some people to the list and that goes off further and further? You're having a conversation, but it needs to be opened. How do we do that? We can do things like discussion forums. Inside of IBM, and again, this applies not just to IBM, but to a lot of our customers who use this as well. If I get an email, someone asks me a question, and I say, it's an interesting question. They ask me, where are you staying at, in what hotel are you staying at in Prague? That's a transaction. I just answer it. It's an email. It's over. However, if someone were to say, Louis, I think that social is interesting, but what are you doing with analytics? How are you guys working with analytics next year? Interesting question. In fact, I haven't thought of that, but let me answer that. And instead of answering it in an email, I'll answer it in a little blog posting or in a file somewhere. Or I may say, I already know a presentation that answers that question. I just go there and send the link to the person. A week later, someone asks the same question. Just go there and send the link to the person. The great thing about that is now the conversation is being held outside my inbox. And when I sometimes go to those places where I've posted things, let's say I've had 2 people ask the question and I've sent them links. I'll come back a month later and that posting will have been read by 100 people. That's 98 possible emails I didn't get. What happens is people begin to say, if we're having a discussion, if you ask me a question and I answer it, and let's say we send another person a question, we stop it. In IBM, we just say, no, let's go have a discussion. And so we go to a discussion forum. Or we put it in a wiki, or put it in a blog. These are all just ways you can post your ideas where other people can actually communicate, can share, can comment. An ideation blog is something that we've created to allow people to vote on ideas. IBM for years has done a thing called idea jams. We're all familiar with the term crowdsource, right? Well, IBM has been doing this for decades. We actually would say, we're interested in smarter ideas, smarter cities, smarter planet. Let's open this up so everyone in the planet can actually discuss ways to make your cities smarter. So let's hear your ideas. And then people will post their ideas. And then other people will see the posting and they'll comment. Actually, here you can go and find a topic and say, I like that topic, and you can vote on it. We've had companies implement this within their organizations, and they've come up with $1 million ideas from their salespeople or from the people that are actually dealing with customers. Status updates are little things that just say, here's what I'm working on today, or here's a question I have. This is like having an inside the company Twitter. Now, one of the concerns here is that executives will look at this and say, yeah, but that's a lot of useless stuff, okay? What will happen is that people will go and type in, I'm going to go get a coffee. I'm now back from getting a coffee. The Danishes were bad today. Those types of things don't happen. What happens in status updates is we hold real conversations about, here's a question I have, can someone answer this? Or I'm looking for this type of information. Or today I'm working on this, or I'm going to see this client. And then other people will jump in. Let me share with you an example of how that works. We're going to do a test here. Okay, this is a quiz. All right, so here's your challenge. You have a candle, a box full of tacks, a book of matches on a table next to a wall. You have to mount this candle on the wall in such a way that when the wax drips, when you light the candle and the wax drips, it won't drip on the table. Okay? And you can't move the table, and you can't put the candle under the table. Those are things that people have suggested in the past. All right? So if you think you have an idea of how that's fixed or how you would do that, just remember the number 1 for this slide. Now here's a hint. This has been told to help people. Let's take the tacks out of the box. So now we have a candle, some tacks, a box, and some matches. Same question. Some people look at this and go, okay, I got it now. Just remember the number 2. And I know it's early, so this is one possible answer, okay? So they use the box. I'm not saying it's the only answer, but it's one answer. Okay, this is number 3. Now, this is where I get to see about your culture. How many in the audience would tell me that you didn't get it until 3? I did not see the answer until 3. One person raised their hand. Thank you for being honest. I wish I had a prize to give you. Okay? Did anyone see this at number 1? They've seen the puzzle before. It was obvious to them. Anyone in the room? There we. See, it's almost as bad to say who didn't know it versus who knows it. This guy raised his hand like, yeah, kind of. Okay. The brilliant thing is, this was a little 60-second puzzle. What if this were a week-long business problem you were struggling with? How do I get this product from here over to my customer over here? How do I put these two things together where I can actually sell them? How do we open up new markets? You've got a question that's in your mind, and you can't find the answer, and this guy knows the answer, but you don't know who he is, and you don't know that it's been done before. Okay, how do you ask that question? You can't go in your organization chart and look under candle solver. Okay, that doesn't exist in your organization. You have to be able to ask the question openly. We were with a company actually that did Department of Defense. They did missile systems. They were actually rocket scientists. Right? We were with this company, and they shared with us a story. They said they had a particular product they were working on for the government, and part of the project required them to build a guidance system in a rocket, and it was a particularly tricky thing to do, and it took them several years and dozens of people to actually do this, but they finished it. And as they were announcing the product, they stood in front of the board of directors and said, here's what we've been working on for the past 5 years. We're now ready to produce this. And they were showing this, and they were mentioning the fact of how they struggled to build this part. One of the guys in the board of directors stood up and said, I'm part of the propulsion lab, and we fixed that 3 years ago. We built that already. It would have saved them 3 years of time if they had just known that somebody else in their organization had already done this. How many times do you think you're solving problems that have already been solved? An example is within my status update, I posted, and this was earlier this year, I posted, I'm coming to Sweden. Looking forward to being there next week. And a gentleman in Sweden wrote, Lewis, it'll be nice to see you again. Can you give me some information about a product called Quicker? It's one of our products. Can you tell me a little bit about its roadmap? Now, if you notice below there, Mona, who actually is a Swede, but she lives in Denmark, she saw his posting on my wall, she answers him, and he thanks her, all before I wake up in the morning. Okay? You guys are 6 hours ahead. This happened, he posted it saying when Lewis wakes up, he'll see this. It was already answered for me by the time I saw it. In fact, I was with a company in Mexico City. I was working with them on a workshop. It was a 4-hour workshop. I came out, got into the cab, I pulled out my iPad. All this is available on mobile devices. So I pull out my iPad, and I'm looking at my status update, and there's a question. How many people in the room are technical? Raise your hand if you're a technical person. All right, several. Okay, good. So I'm not a technical person. Someone had posted on my profile board a question. How do you install the Java widget on the application on the notes sidebar using Java Beans? Something? I had no idea what the question meant. I didn't understand the question. It was like in a foreign language to me, okay? It embarrassed me. I didn't know the answer. What was interesting was it was 4 hours ago that the guy posted it. And right below it, 20 minutes after he posted it, someone had answered it. And I thought, brilliant. I don't have to show that I'm ignorant. This is great. But I was a little curious about John, the guy who posted this, because he knows me. And I went to him thinking, he's trying to show me up, right? So I went to John and I said, John, why did you post that on my board? You know I don't know the answer to that question. And he said, Lewis, I know you don't know the answer, but people that you know, right? Lewis, it's like saying, Lewis, I know you're an idiot, but you're around smart people, right? Which is fine for me, right? By the way, social can help you if you're an idiot, if you just have good, smart friends. It makes you look good, right? But normally in a company, think about that. I would have received an email from him. Lewis, do you know someone who knows the answer to this question? 4 hours later, I would have seen the email. Then I would have sent it out, like we do, sent it out to 5 or 6 other people, email. They would have responded back through me. It would have gone on forever. 20 minutes time, he got his answer before I even knew the question existed. Luis Suarez, the guy I mentioned earlier that lives without email. By the way, I say that and people will challenge me on this. Luis still uses email. His boss still sends him his bonus numbers, his salary figures. Some of that confidential stuff still goes through email, so he still gets email. But he actually told me the other day, I was part of a conversation with him, and some email was being used. And he said, please stop this. You're driving my email count up. This week I've had 14 emails. Stop it. Right? Can you imagine getting 14 emails in a week? Right? What he does is people will ask questions. Like they go to his board and they'll say, Luis, I need your support. Can you help me with this project? And then he'll answer and say, yes, this is what I can do to help you. But what I think is interesting about this conversation is a third person jumped in and said, I can help. Imagine having people jump in and help you because they see something interesting going on and they want to get involved. Knowledge accidents. And it's about openly sharing information. It's not just about having a conversation that's open. It's not just about having, this idea of people-centric, but it's a matter of how do we openly share ideas? How do we openly share what we know? I have 3 children. Those of you who have kids might recognize this, but my kids are now grown. They're out of the house, off my payroll. I don't have to deal with them anymore. I'm still their dad. But when they were kids, when they were little small children, they were in a kindergarten program. This is 5, 6 years old. A Christmas program, okay? And so we went to their school, and they're going to sing Christmas carols. Do any of you ever go to a Christmas program with kids? Okay, they all stand across the stage. They're lined up across the stage, and they're singing, and the teacher's leading them in a song. And the teacher turns around, and she says, and now we're going to do a couple of songs using rhythm instruments. And I don't know if you use rhythm instruments here, but they're little things that make a lot of noise. And so she has this cardboard box full of these rhythm instruments, and she goes down the aisle, and she passes them off to all the kids. And so the kids reach in the box, and they pull out sticks and little blocks with sandpaper, and this one kid has a triangle. And so they sing a couple of songs just beating on these things, and we as parents are just clapping. It's great, beautiful noise. Then, all right, because anything they do is beautiful, right? She turns around and she says, now, parents, we appreciate you being here tonight and supporting us. We're going to close the program tonight with a couple of songs. We're not going to use the rhythm instruments, and we hope you guys have enjoyed the evening. And then she did an interesting thing. The teacher turned around, cued the pianist started playing the piano, and the kids started singing. But they were puzzled. They had these things in their hands. She didn't bring the box back by to drop into the box. And as you know, kids, if they got something in their hands, they're like, what do I do with this? And so they were like, I'm not supposed to use these. We're supposed to just sing. And so they started doing things with them, like sticking them in their pockets and putting them under their arms and doing all kinds of things to get rid of these things out of their hands. The one kid on the end had a triangle. He looked down the aisle and he was looking, what have you done with it? And they see people with their pockets. So he took the triangle and took the corner and stuck it into his pocket and tried to put it in his pocket. And it wouldn't fit. It was too big. So what did he do? He pulled it out, turned it to another corner, stuck it in his pocket. It didn't fit. Pulled it out. We are watching this kid, okay? Everybody in the audience is eyes fixed on this one kid, not even knowing what they're singing, watching this one kid struggle with this problem, okay? The look on his face was just telling. It was like, I have to get back to singing. All these kids are singing. I need to be singing. I've got this problem. How did you fix it? All the other kids are oblivious. They're just singing. He's struggling. And everybody's just going, fix the problem, right? And then, as if just out of the blue, he goes, I got it. He took the stick, the clanger, put it in his pocket, hung the triangle on it, stepped forward and started singing, right? Unimpressed with himself, okay? Most of the adults in the audience were like, I would have never figured that out, right? We're all applauding. We actually started clapping, okay? They're in the middle of the song. The teacher's going, why are you clapping? We're not through yet, right? Like I said, the kid didn't even understand that he had this great solution. That happens in your organization every day. Okay, that same thing happens. You have someone sitting in a cubicle, sitting at a PC, working on a problem, struggling with it. I need to get this report in. I just don't know how to do this. I'm not sure how to make this happen. They look around. They see all the other workers. All the other workers are getting their reports in on time. What's wrong with me? Why can't I fix this? Worse yet, the manager has no idea that you've got a problem. Doesn't even know that you're struggling. Maybe doesn't even care. but for most cases, don't even know that you're struggling. And this person is struggling with a problem. And then they come up with a brilliant solution. Maybe it's unique. Maybe it's something that there's another kid with a triangle that needs to solve this. What happens? That person fixes the problem, goes back to work. That brilliant solution is lost. Imagine if you came, in fact, I'm sure you've done this. You have been trying to fix something. You've been trying to make something work. And all of a sudden, you figured it out. You figured a shortcut. When I'm in Excel and I do this, then this happens. It's magic. And you've come up with a solution, but how do you share that? How do you share that with other people? Let's say you're out on the internet and you find a particular article that's interesting, or you find something that's relevant. How do you share that within your company? I know how you share that when you're in social networks, so Facebook or whatever, you just share it, tweet it, you Facebook it, whatever. But in your company, how do you do that? Right? Let's say I found a video. This happens to be a guy named Ken Robinson. How many of you watch TED Talks? Anyone? TED? It's kind of addictive, isn't it? Okay, you get it on TED Talks. But they're brilliant for good ideas. I find a TED Talk I think is interesting, and I want to share it with my people at work. Not with Facebook, not with LinkedIn. I want to share it with my people at work. I can actually just say, I want to bookmark this. But when I bookmark it socially within the company. So what happens is, it adds some information to the page, I give it some tags, and I can even say, you know what? I'm a member of a community that's called the Innovation Hub. Let me make sure it goes in that community where people in that community will see this. So just as easy as just clicking a few buttons, and then it's shared. Now it's shared socially. No longer do I say, gee, I found something interesting. Let me copy that URL. Let me go put it in an email. Let me send the link out to 100 people. I just socially share it. And it's part of our conversation. If I'm sharing with Peter or someone else from the team here, I found this interesting thing, they'll say, well, where is it? First of all, they don't even have to ask where it is. They know it's in my bookmarks. That's where they're going to find it. We have files. So when you create something that you want to share, you put it in a file place. Now the file place, in this case, happens to be my file place. It's around me. All right? So when someone says, I'm looking for a presentation, I'm looking for social evangelist, I'm looking for social presentation, they might find me, and if they look in my files, they'll find this information. Okay? The other day, someone tagged me. When you tag someone within IBM or within our systems, you actually get a little email that says, Bob tagged you, and which is just an information thing for you. Someone tagged me with the word photos, like photographs, photos. Tagged me with photos. Why? I asked the person, I said, why did you tag me photos? And they said, because your presentations have a lot of good photographs in them. So if I'm ever looking for good photographs, I could just find you. And if I find you, I'll find your presentations. If I find your presentations, I find photographs. All right? So when you have files that are associated with you, someone asked me for a bio. I need your bio. And I said, go look at my files. That's where it's going to be. People begin to associate, this is where you put your knowledge. In fact, a lady at IBM came up to me the other day, and she's new with IBM. She's been here for about a year. And she came to me and she said, you know why I like working at IBM? She said, I can be as smart as you only 5 minutes later. Which is, think about that. Think about the culture that it takes to say, anything that I learn, things that I discover, I'm going to make it available where everyone can benefit from it. Okay? So files, we do things with media. Many of us are using more multimedia, videos, audio. And it has to be integrated with what you do. This happens to be inside of IBM. When we go to a web page, when we go to our intranet, this is what we see. And you may see some of this later, but here's my news. My normal stuff is over on the left. This whole middle piece is dedicated to social. What's going on in the company? What are people around me? What are people in my network doing? What are they asking for? What are they saying? And if I want to look for some information, I just do a search over on the right side. And if I do a search over there, it will search the social network for that information. Now, IBM is, 430-something thousand people spread across the world. I would guess half of them, if you ask them, so what do you think about this IBM product called IBM Connections, the social product that we have? What do you think about that? Most of them would say, I don't know what you're talking about. Because they don't think they're using the product. But yet I asked them, so how do you keep track of what's going on? Oh, well, I use the little social status update. Oh. How do you find people? Well, I do that little people search thing. It's because it's ingrained in what they're doing. We use email. So inside of email, we have our clients. We have social. So inside of an email, in fact, I'll show you an Outlook page. So here at Outlook, I get an email from somebody, Heather Reeds. Down below it, I can see her profile page, her business card. So this takes me to her profile, to her communities, to her other files. Over here on the far side, these are the things that we've talked about recently. Here's what Heather's been doing recently. So it's a bit of social context. Whatever business you're in, let's say you're in healthcare, we don't want you to stop being a healthcare person and start thinking social. We want healthcare to become social. If you're a bank, I don't want you to say, I'm a bank, now let me go do social. No, I want my banking to become social. So we bring social into what you do. I have an SAP system. I have an ERP system. I have any kind of system that you have. My intranet, I want it to become social. And if you have content, let's say you have some stuff in an old content system. If you have files sitting around, you can actually bring it into a social system. Any of you have SharePoint? No one has SharePoint? Come on. Fess up. I'm from IBM. It doesn't scare me if you have. Most people have SharePoint. They have some SharePoint libraries in their organization somewhere. Guess what? We actually make SharePoint social. This was a SharePoint library. It's inside of a community. So we can have discussions, and we can have wikis, and we have blogs, and we can have our SharePoint content right in here. So it's about starting with your people, opening the conversation, and open sharing. Most of our executives are at this point, and I love this quote from Gandhi. There go my people, I must catch them, for I'm their leader. Most of our leaders are behind our people, right? And those guys who said you're in a technology organization, if your organizations aren't already doing something with social, this is going to be your network architecture. Okay? I don't know if it scares you or not, but even as a line of business person, imagine, where do we keep our education videos? Well, we put those in YouTube. And marketing, where do we put our video, or where our images? Well, that's in Flickr. And do we have blogs? Yeah, we have blogs. It's out on Blogger. Or we do this over here. All over the place, you've got your information. This is your corporate knowledge. Is now spread out everywhere. And someone is going to come to you at some point and say, get control of this. And how do you do that, right? Or you could just do this. Any of your companies block the internet? You don't have to raise your hand. That might be embarrassing. I was actually doing a presentation with a company, and I was queued up. There was 5 or 6 speakers ahead of me. And we were with this company, and I had my BlackBerry with me, and someone had sent me a LinkedIn request to be in their network. And so I had my PC, and I was on their company's intranet, and so I just hit the LinkedIn request, and I got this. The company said, no, sorry, you can't go there. It's on the internet. You can't get there. So I took a screenshot and put it in my presentation, and when I stood up to talk to them, I said, this is your answer? And they said, yeah, we don't let people go out and be social because that's a waste of time. All right? And I asked them, I said, well, then I think it's an interesting approach, but I missed, when I came in this morning, I came into your lobby, and I didn't see the big box. And they said, what box? And I said, the box where you collect people's smartphones, and their iPads, and their BlackBerries, and where did you collect those? And they go, we don't collect those. And I said, well, you're not keeping people from being social. They're sitting at their desk on their phones being social. They're just not using your network. So you're not stopping them. You're just not part of the conversation, okay? So what are some advice I'd give you? So I don't know how many of you are actually using social within your organizations today, but here's a few pieces of advice. First of all, get started, all right? If you're not already starting, you're already behind. By the way, if you haven't, much like the Gandhi quote, if you haven't already started, your people have started for you. It's just now a matter of you catching up to them. So number one, get started. And don't try to figure this out. You can't figure this out. You can't ahead of time determine how it's going to be used. Find the people in your organization who are socially active. I've walked into companies before that said, we're not a socially active company. That's not us. In fact, there was a German company, he said, we do tires. That's what we do. We don't do social. I actually had gone out and looked, and they had Facebook pages that had his brand on it. There was a LinkedIn community with his brand. He had no idea that this was happening. Find those people in your organization and say, we want to become social as a culture inside of our organization. Help us. You can also find the contributors. You may be contributors. And when I say contributors, these are the people that if I were IT, I'd go find the people whose email boxes are overloaded. Why is their email box overloaded? People keep asking them questions. 2 weeks ago, I was in Stockholm with a bank. And the bank said, we don't have a social problem. We're not interested in social. We're a conservative bank. We don't do social. But we have a problem, and here's our problem. Our bank's been around for 100 years. And we have people who come to work at this bank, and they stay here forever. A very loyal, customer, very loyal employees. But the people who have been around for a long time know a lot. They know about clients, they know about all the different products we serve, and they spend their entire day on the phone answering questions. People call them and they say, look, I know you don't know this, but do you know someone who? And they said, those people who are our most important asset within our company are spending all their time just answering questions. We need to get those people back to work. And I don't care how we do it. It turns out that social was the answer. By those people taking those questions and answers and posting them, it actually freed them up to do more things. Find the contributors, find the people who know the answers, get them to start posting their answers socially. It makes their day easier, makes their life easier, and then it also, the other people will follow. And reward the followers. When people reuse information, reward them for it. Congratulate them for it. In fact, our chief executive officer, a lady by the name of Jenny Rometty, she's a CEO of IBM. She actually went out, instead of just sending an email out to the people who were there, we call them like a 100% club. Instead of just sending an email saying, thank you for being in the 100% club, she actually went out to their profile pages and thanked them publicly. Appreciate you doing this work. You're a valued employee within IBM, and look forward to working with you next year. The CEO of our company posted on people's boards. That meant more to anyone than just getting a blanket email or getting a check in the mail even. And you need that leadership. You need that person in the organization who can make this change. It has to be someone who can change the culture. I've not been here in the Czech Republic long enough to know what your culture is like. Okay? So I don't know if you have a culture of sharing. I don't know if you have a culture of being very closed. I don't know what your culture is like. But organizations need to open up, at least internally first. But someone needs to challenge, somebody needs to do that in your organization, someone at a high level. So think now, who's that person? Is it your CEO? Is it your chief communications officer? Is it a marketing person? By the way, it's not the IT person. Okay, sorry guys, in IT, you can't lead this, all right? This is not something you're going to do. It's hard for an IT person to walk into marketing and say, this is the way you will behave, right? Because marketing is not buying that, right? So you have to find an executive. Now, when I ask you this question, you may be thinking, yeah, but you don't know my executives. My bosses, the people that run our company, they will never go for this because they have a lot of concerns. I want to share with you just for a few minutes some of the concerns I've heard, okay? This social stuff's all too new. We better wait. Let's just wait and see what's going to happen, and then we'll do something. Let's let other people do this first. And because the social stuff, it's new, right? That's wrong. This is not new. We've been doing this for years. You communicate, you share, you ask questions. We've been using other tools to do it, but it's still the same thing we've done. By the way, we have this conversation over and over again about the social being new. How about social is a waste of time? How many of your bosses would probably say, we don't want our people doing social because that's a waste of time? We don't do that. We're in this business. Social is not something we need to do. This is the people that block the internet. Social is a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. It's actually quite useful to use. In fact, I have a very active business social life. I have a somewhat active personal social life. Actually, my wife manages my Facebook page because that's what we use to communicate with our kids. But inside of the company, with our business partners, with our customers, I share things. I'm quite active socially. It's not a waste of time. It's actually a very good communication tool for us. And this comment about naysayers. Another company I was with, they were about to go into social, and the president of the company did a brilliant thing. He said, we're going to have a little, what he called a phase one. We're going to start this off. And part of phase one is going to be Elizabeth. And he pointed to Elizabeth, and she was in the room. Elizabeth was from accounting. She hated social. She'd been with the company forever. She had an email box that had no folders in it, just one long email inbox. Thousands of emails. That's the way she worked. Everything was spreadsheets. She sent spreadsheets around all over the place. She thought social was an absolute bore. He said, Elizabeth's going to be on your team. And I thought, brilliant. You've just given us a person who hates us. This is wonderful, right? She turned out to be an advocate for social when we were finished because she saw all of a sudden how it could actually alleviate some pain. In fact, she told me privately, she said, I have been wanting to retire for years, but I can't because I know a process that no one else knows, and I feel like if I left the company, it would hurt them. I don't know how many of you feel that strongly about your company, but I mean, she felt so strongly about the company, she said, I can't leave the company. I can't retire because I'm kind of the store of knowledge. She actually saw this as an opportunity for her to get her knowledge out there and to actually leave and go be with her grandkids. She was just an advocate for this. So often you take the people who think the worst about this, get them on board, and they become your best evangelists. And this whole social stuff, it's going to get out of control. Okay, from a company perspective, it's, oh, goodness. How are we going to control what people say? How are we going to control the information spread? In fact, Conrad Gessner had this quote that said, all of this confusion and harm, this is all going to happen because of this proliferation of information. Too much information is going to be out there. He was talking about the printing press in 1550. Okay? Let me remind you, some of you aren't old enough to remember this, but some of us are old enough to remember when we said, this internet stuff, is this really for business? Can we really use the internet? Email, come on, email in business? That's that funny thing that those college kids and stuff are using, all right? Think about how we've actually changed over. Some people will say, let's start off with a pilot. Okay, we don't want to jump into this. Let's do a little pilot. And by the way, pilots aren't bad. It's much like when I said email and conference calls and so forth. They're not bad, but they can be abused. A danger of using a social pilot, and I'll give you this as an example. Some companies that we go to, they'll say, let's put it in a pilot. And then we'll come back 3 months later and we'll say, so how did it go? And they go, well, people really didn't use it that much. Not a whole lot of stuff went on. A few communities were created, but really not much conversation. And so we're really not going to do that. The problem with pilots is that, number one, they're kind of deemed experimental. All right? So think about this. What if I came to you and said, I have a pilot for a bank. Okay? It's just a test. But if you would please put your money in it. Invest your time, put some money in this bank, and it may go away in 90 days, but just would you do that for me? You're not going to do that. You're not going to waste your time. So if you go to people and say, I want you to get involved in this new culture, this new way of doing things, but by the way, it's a pilot. People aren't going to invest their time. They're not going to put their most important assets in this thing. They're not going to share it. And the other thing that happens with pilots is they'll say, you know what, we're going to pilot this with the salespeople. Or let's go to the IT group, or we'll go to this marketing group. And they'll just say these 12 people or these 20 people, there'll be a pilot. Guess what? Those 20 people work together on a daily basis already. They know how to communicate. What you need to do is you need to say, I want to make this phase one. This is the phase one of our project. We're going to a culture change within our organization. And we're going to have some people from marketing and some people from sales and some people from the outside. We're going to do this together. That way you actually see the benefit. So be careful with pilots. I like people. And I think the best of people, all right? But you don't do social because people are really nice and they really want to share and they're always looking for something to help out. We're selfish individuals, okay? It has to be important for me to do it. Why would I use social? It has to be a benefit to me. I tell people it's the difference between a vitamin and an aspirin, okay? You know what a vitamin is? So if I came to somebody and said, I have this vitamin for you, it'll make you feel better, you'll be happier, make you healthy, that's fine. You know, a vitamin's one thing. But if I see that you have a headache, and I say I have an aspirin for you, and it's going to solve your headache, you're going to take the aspirin because it's going to get rid of the pain. The vitamin, you may take, you may not. People think social's kind of a vitamin. It's nice to have. It'll be more engaging. People will be friendlier. Whatever. It's actually an aspirin. It solves business pain. I don't use social because it's fun. I use social because I don't want to work weekends. All right? I don't want to have to get up in the middle of the night and do work with people geographically that's in China. I don't want to have to do that, right? So we do things socially so that I don't have to work hard. I don't have to know everything about every product that we have in IBM. I just have to know people who know everything about every product that we have in IBM. Social is a benefit to me personally. That's why I use it. You've got to find the people, and you've got to find their pain and address it. And this whole thing about just email being bad, it's not that email's bad, as I said earlier. Email doesn't kill productivity. People kill productivity. They sometimes use email to do it. Right? How often are you guilty of getting an email saying, I don't know the answer to this question, or I don't know much about this, and if I spent some time now, I could figure this out, but instead, let me just do CC 5 different people and email it off, and it's off my desk now, I'm done for now, and maybe if it's important, it'll come back, but that's okay, I've sent it off. You have now wasted 5 or 6 other people's time, you've just proliferated a problem. I mean, often we will kill productivity by using email. And those status updates I told you earlier, these little trivial things that people say, they're useless. It's really not useless. It's actually very important. So when people think of social, sometimes they think of Twitter, and they think of the Justin Bieber and the Britney Spears and their tweets, and they think that's useless. But think about in a business how those little bits of information can be helpful. We've had people say, today I'm working on this particular project, and someone else will jump in and say, while you're working on this project, please fix this problem. Or while you're there, or here's a solution for you that you're looking for. And the last thing is to say that our people need social, we know how they're going to use it. So you'll sit down with a team and you say, we want to have a social strategy. And so what we're going to do is, you guys over here, this is how you're going to use wikis, and this is how you guys are going to use blogs, and this is how you guys are going to use discussion forums, and over here are community. You basically try to prescribe how people are going to use this. You can't figure this out, okay? Your people are way too creative. That guy who posted that question on my board, knowing that I didn't know the answer, but for the purpose of talking to my community, I would have never guessed to doing that. Never crossed my mind to do that. Now I use it all the time. But the point is, people are creative. They'll figure things out. And all this social data, just a lot of noise, just a lot of chatter. There's just too much of it out there. You're saying now I have email, and I have these updates, and I have all this stuff coming from my communities. It's just too much information. I can't keep up with it. It is a lot of data. But having that conversation is good. Knowing that it's going on, by the way, is good. As I tell companies, if you're not, when it comes to the social conversation, if you say, as a company, I'm not going to listen, I'm not going to be a part, I'm not going to participate for now, social's happening anyway. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, okay? People are talking anyway. You need to be a part of the conversation. You need to jump in. And tools like analytics and other things can help you keep up to that conversation. And another point. We're going to measure how good social is by how many people use it, by adoption. Think about this. If you were to put social in your companies today, how many of you would probably look at and say, 6 months from now, we're going to see how many people are active socially. How many people have posted things, how many people have put their updates, how many people have updated their profiles. That's going to be our measure of success. That's wrong. You can't measure it that way. It's like me coming to you as a company and saying, I can tell that you're a great bank because I've looked and you send a lot of emails. So you must be good because a lot of people are using emails. No, you don't measure it that way. You measure by what's the business results. Another company, it's a small company, 200 people, they were trying to go social, do a social business thing. And by the way, for small companies, this is brilliant because you guys can actually change culture very rapidly. Large companies like us and others have to have a long process to change a culture. As a small company, 20, 50, 100, 200 people, you can actually change a culture fast. But this company was 200 people. They put in a social system. 12 people actually got on the system and started using it. I came back to them like a year later and said, so how's it going for you? They said, it's brilliant. We have produced $1 million products. We've shared this with companies, whatever. What's your adoption like? Well, we have 12 people that really use it a lot. 12 people out of 200, but yet they were making the business profits, okay? It's all about business results. What are we getting out of this? If you need help, we can help you. IBM.com/social is a place you can go. find information. We have governance. We have guidelines, how to behave socially, things that you might look at to say, we'd like to do this within our company. Because if we didn't share it, we wouldn't be social in doing it, right? So I have 15 minutes left. And so I wanted to have time for questions, if there are questions.